The Academy did not orbit a star. It orbited certainty. Suspended above the pale void of the Nerith expanse, the Varelian War Conclave had no need for warmth or light from a sun. Its creators believed stars were chaotic things, unreliable, emotional, prone to collapse, much like the younger species that still worshipped them. The conclave was different. It was geometry perfected. Vast, interlocking rings of dark alloy rotated in silent harmony, each surface etched with the records of battles fought long before most civilizations learned how to write history. Dim blue light traced those engravings like veins beneath metal skin, pulsing with data, memory, doctrine. For over 1,000 cycles, this was where the galaxy decided who was fit to command. Species did not come here to learn how to fight. They came to learn why others lost. Inside the primary hall, gravity was tuned to Varelian standard, slightly heavier than most species preferred. A subtle test. The weak adjusted. The strong adapted. The unworthy complained. Hundreds of cadets stood in disciplined rows across the obsidian floor, each marked by biology and pride. The Corthan shock-bearers stood motionless in layered exoplates, breathing slow and synchronized. The Ashari tacticians shimmered faintly as their neural lattices processed probability trees in real time. The Varelians themselves, tall, pale, four-eyed, watched from the upper tiers, their expressions unreadable and unnecessary. And then there was the human. Cadet Jonah Reyes stood alone at the far right of the formation. No exoskeleton reinforced his spine. No neural crown enhanced his cognition. No ceremonial weapon denoted lineage or conquest. Just a simple uniform of dark fabric, a compact insignia on the chest, and boots that looked far too thin for the gravity pressing down on him. He adjusted his stance quietly. Several instructors noticed. Most scoffed. "A single human?" one murmured, mandibles twitching in dry amusement. "They send one and expect parity?" another replied. "I was told they excelled at endurance," a third said, "not comprehension." High Arbiter Cell Core observed in silence. Cell Core had broken 3 rebellions and authored the Doctrine of Predictive Collapse, a tactical framework still taught across 12 sectors. His species valued foresight above all else. They did not guess, they calculated, and his calculations were clear. Humans were an anomaly, but not a threat. They advanced too quickly. They improvised instead of refining. They survived catastrophes that should have called them, not by superiority, but by stubborn refusal to stop moving. Admirable, perhaps, but command required more than persistence. It required control. Cell Core stepped forward, his voice amplified through the chamber without raising it. "Cadets," he said, "you stand within the conclave because your species believes you exceptional." His gaze swept the hall. "Statistics disagree." A ripple of restrained satisfaction passed through the instructors. "This academy does not reward potential, it rewards outcomes. Over the next cycles, you will be tested across strategy, adaptability, leadership, and sacrifice." His eyes settled briefly on the human. "Failure is expected." A few cadets glanced toward Jonah, some with curiosity, others with open disdain. Jonah said nothing. He had learned long ago that silence unsettled people more than protest. The simulation chamber unfolded like a living thing. Holographic stars ignited across the void, forming a contested system of 6 planets, 3 moons, and 1 decaying orbital habitat. Enemy fleets appeared in red lattice outlines. Friendly forces glowed pale blue. The scenario was brutal by design. A defensive engagement with insufficient resources, civilian populations embedded across multiple gravity wells, and an enemy commander known by reputation for exploiting hesitation. Cadets rotated through command positions. The Corthan overwhelmed early, sacrificing civilians to secure orbital dominance, efficient, predictable.
The Ashari delayed conflict entirely, manipulating probability fields to engineer a stalemate that technically preserved lives but ceded territory. The Varelians executed doctrine flawlessly, minimal losses, total control. Then Selkor gestured. "Human cadet," he said, "you will command." Jonah stepped forward. The interface adjusted reluctantly, as if unsure how to accommodate him. He rested his hands on the console and studied the system in silence. Seconds passed. An instructor clicked irritation. Does he not understand the prompt? Jonah finally spoke. "How long has the enemy been here?" Selkor tilted his head. "Irrelevant. They are present." "How long," Jonah repeated calmly, "have they occupied civilian space?" A pause. Data streamed. 6 local cycles, Selkor replied. Jonah nodded once. He did not deploy fleets. He rerouted supply lines. He opened civilian communication channels. He waited. Minutes stretched into an uncomfortable quiet. Then, fracture. Enemy logistics began to fail. Civilian unrest destabilized their ground forces. Command cohesion eroded as supply captains argued over dwindling resources. Only then did Jonah act. 3 precise maneuvers, 1 feint, no pursuit. The enemy withdrew. Civilian casualties? Minimal. Friendly losses? Negligible. The chamber remained silent. "That was inefficient," one instructor said slowly. "You prolonged engagement," another added. "Luck," a third concluded. Selkor studied the results again. "No," he said softly, "that was patience." Field trials followed. Cadets were grouped by compatibility. Jonah was not selected, not once. The others formed alliances based on doctrine and biology, convinced that cohesion required similarity. The humans stood alone at the edge of the staging platform as terrain generators activated and gravity fluctuated violently. A Varelian cadet approached him briefly. "Do not interfere," she said. "You will compromise predictive models." Jonah nodded. "Understood." The trial began. Chaos erupted instantly. Textbook maneuvers failed as terrain shifted unpredictably. Probability trees collapsed under variables no simulation could fully resolve. Jonah moved. He used cover others ignored. He warned squads before ambushes triggered. He diverted energy from his own position to stabilize collapsing terrain for cadets who dismissed him minutes earlier. "Why help us?" one Ashari demanded over open channel. "Because if you fall," Jonah replied, breath tight, "we all lose." One by one, they began to listen, not because he outranked them, because he saw what they missed. From the observation tier, Selkor felt something unfamiliar stir. Uncertainty. By the 4th cycle, the Academy had stopped pretending the human was irrelevant. They did not acknowledge him openly. Varelians did not alter doctrine in response to anomalies. They documented them, isolated them, observed until the pattern revealed itself or collapsed under scrutiny. Jonah Reyes did neither. He persisted, not with defiance, not with pride, but with a quiet, unnerving consistency. Every scenario changed slightly after his participation, not enough to invalidate the conclave's models, at least not on the surface. Yet beneath the metrics, something fundamental had begun to drift. Cadets survived engagements they statistically should not have. Morale curves flattened instead of fracturing. Command failures took longer to manifest. The instructors noticed. "Correlation does not imply causation," one instructor reminded the council. Selkor said nothing. He had replayed the recordings more times than he admitted. The announcement came without ceremony. "All cadets will report to the crucible chamber," the arbiter's voice echoed. "This evaluation determines command viability." A murmur rippled through the ranks. The crucible was not a simulation. It was a stress engine, a system designed to expose how commanders behaved when doctrine failed entirely. No fixed terrain, no predictable enemy, limited resources, conflicting objectives issued in real time. Cadets entered knowing one thing with certainty: someone would be blamed for the outcome. Teams were assigned at random. Jonah was placed in Command Auxiliary, a position with no formal authority, advisory only. A concession, the instructors told themselves, a way to observe without empowering. The primary commander was Corthan, massive, decorated, confident. He acknowledged Jonah with a single glance. Speak only when asked, human. Jonah inclined his head, understood. The chamber ignited. Gravity surged, terrain fractured into floating shards. Hostile contacts blinked in and out of sensor range, never long enough to fix. Within minutes, the Corthan executed a decisive push.
Within seconds, it failed. 2 units isolated, supply drones lost, civilian zones destabilized. The Corthan roared orders faster than subordinates could execute them. Jonah watched, waited, then spoke. "If you reinforce the left flank now, you'll win the skirmish," he said evenly, "and lose the war." The Corthan ignored him. The flank collapsed. The commander turned, fury radiating from his posture. "You were instructed—" "Your right flank has terrain memory. It's reforming behind us. The enemy's forcing you forward because they know you can't retreat." Silence. The Corthan hesitated. That hesitation saved them. He ordered a withdrawal, against every instinct his species revered. The terrain sealed behind them moments later. For the first time, the Corthan looked at the human not as a liability, but as an asset. Jonah never seized command. He didn't need to. Across engagements, his influence spread quietly. Cadets began routing information through him unofficially. They asked questions in downtime. They listened when he spoke, not because he was human, but because he was right more often than anyone else. Selkor watched alliances form across species boundaries. That was not supposed to happen. The conclave taught hierarchy, predictability, controlled cooperation. Humans did something else entirely. They adapted together. "This is dangerous," one instructor warned. "They are forming emotional dependencies." "Correction," Selkor replied. "They are forming trust." The word tasted unfamiliar. The final trial was not announced in advance. It activated while cadets slept. Emergency lights blazed. Alarms tore through the habitation ring. Gravity spiked without warning. Selkor's voice cut through the chaos. "Cadets, you are now engaged in a live response evaluation." Data flooded their displays. A star was collapsing. Not a simulation, a real one. A nearby system's primary had entered terminal instability, threatening 3 inhabited worlds and the Academy itself. Evacuation fleets were limited. Time was not. "This is not a test," Selkor continued. "You will respond, or you will fail." Command was decentralized. Every cadet scrambled to apply doctrine, and doctrine shattered. Predictive models diverged wildly. Calculations contradicted each other. No species framework could resolve the scale of cascading failure. Panic crept in, except in one corner of the command nexus. Jonah stood still, listening. "This doesn't work," an Ishari whispered. "We can't save them all." Jonah exhaled slowly. "Then stop trying to," he said. Heads turned. "We save enough, and we buy time." Selkor leaned forward. "Explain," he commanded. Jonah did, not with equations, with stories. He spoke of coastal evacuations on Earth, of cities built in flood zones, of choices made when perfection was impossible and survival meant compromise. "We don't outcalculate this, we outlast it." His plan was inelegant, resource-heavy, emotionally costly. And it worked.
Cadets moved as one, not because the system demanded it, but because they believed in the outcome. As the first evacuation fleet cleared the gravity well, Selkor realized something profound. The human had not broken the scenario. He had broken the assumption behind it. And the conclave would never be the same. The star did not wait for consensus. It swelled, convulsed, and shed vast sheets of burning matter into the void. Sensors screamed as gravity warped navigation paths into lethal spirals. Time compressed into decisions measured in heartbeats. Across the command nexus, cadets froze. They had never been trained for this. The conclave taught victory conditions, loss thresholds, acceptable sacrifices. But the universe unfolding before them was not a problem to be solved. It was a tragedy to be survived. And for the first time, the Academy's greatest minds looked to a human. Jonah Reyes stood at the center of the chaos, hands resting on the console, not as a master, but as an anchor. "Listen to me," he said, not loudly, not urgently, just clearly. "We don't beat a star. We endure it." Selkor watched the cadets fracture into two groups. One followed doctrine. They calculated optimal evacuations, ranked populations by projected survivability, and argued over probability curves. They saved numbers. The other group followed Jonah. They saved people. They rerouted ships mid-flight to pull stranded transports out of collapsing vectors. They overrode safety protocols to keep shields active seconds longer than recommended. They made choices no algorithm would authorize. And somehow, fewer died. Not because the humans were stronger, but because they were willing to care in ways the system never quantified. Selkor felt something shift inside his chest cavity, an unfamiliar compression. "This violates every principle of command efficiency," an instructor whispered. Selkor replied quietly, "Then perhaps the principles are incomplete." The Academy's central processor began to fail, not from overload, from contradiction. Human-driven decisions created outcomes outside acceptable prediction margins. Feedback loops destabilized. The system could not reconcile empathy with efficiency. Warnings flashed. Logic conflict, unresolvable. Selkor made a choice no conclave arbiter had made in 10,000 cycles. He shut the system down. All authority passed to the cadets, to Jonah. Jonah didn't celebrate. He didn't even acknowledge the transfer. He just kept going. "Ishari teams, pull back now. You've done enough. Corthan units, hold the line. 5 more seconds. Someone get eyes on that transport. If there's even one soul left, go." They moved, not because he was superior, but because they trusted him with their lives. The final evacuation ship cleared the blast radius as the star collapsed into silence. 3 worlds survived, the Academy survived, and the conclave's certainty did not. The chamber went dark. No alarms, no metrics, just breathing. Selkor descended from the observation tier and approached Jonah. "You violated doctrine," he said. "Yes, sir," Jonah nodded. "You broke our systems." "I didn't mean to." Selkor studied the human for a long moment. Then he inclined his head. "You did not break them. You revealed their limits." Around them, alien cadets watched in stunned silence, not at the human, but at themselves. The conclave report would later struggle to define what made humans unique. Strength? No. Intellect? Not alone. Adaptability? Partially. In the end, they recorded a simpler truth. Humans did not seek perfection, they sought meaning. And when faced with impossible odds, they did not ask, "Can we win?" They asked, "Who do we save?" Jonah Reyes returned to his quarters that night alone. He sent a message home. Still alive, still human. Across the galaxy, doctrines were rewritten.
Simulations updated, command schools changed forever, not because a human conquered them, but because one reminded them what command was for. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human.